And we're on. And there's only two of us because Chris is detained. He has to, well, he's not in prison or jail or
Well,
anything.
literally, maybe he is.
Maybe he is, right? But he's been detained, as in he's doing something for work, so he's not available at this early of an hour. So it's just me and Simon Clancy. And of course, this is the preview for Thursday Night Football, Dolphins, Bills. As always, we are brought to you by 305 800 Pain, just like the Dolphins. They give you plenty of pain. So kick off the season. You need to be ready to. You need to be ready to after an accident. Your first move should be calling 305 800 Pain. Better Business Bureau accredited with an A+ rating. Your car accident personal injury specialist. Fast connection with trusted doctors and attorneys. Always ready to take your call 24/7. Again, 305 800 Pain. 305 800 Pain. Hopefully, the Dolphins are not going to be calling 305 800 Pain after this game
Maybe the fans are.
on Thursday. Uh, but we'll get into that. But I wanted to ask you something because I said something yesterday on our Discord. And by the way, it's OnlyFins. You can see it right there on my hat. Uh, if you want to become a member, you got to go to Discord, and it's at discord.gg/OnlyFins. You become a member there, all access for $4.99 a month. I was saying modern era because, yeah, we could get into, Reggie White. That was a great free agent signing. But let's just say since the start of this show, so we're talking about 8 years. Is Baker Mayfield the best free agent signing of these last 8 years?
That's a good question. He's so much fun, isn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that quarterback-starved teams have kind of given up on him. Cleveland, Carolina, to an extent, were quarterback-starved. I just think, like, you saw what he did when he came in with the Rams. Remember that Monday night game or Sunday night game with the Rams, where he literally got off the plane the night before and came in and had a wristband and literally drove them down the field at the end of the game to win the game.
He was signed on a Thursday. He had one practice on Friday. He won the game on Sunday.
And I think it's a marriage of system/scheme and just talent, but he's just such a great fun watch. He's such a gamer. I love how physical he is. I love how tough he is. He's got everything that you want. I mean, he's a really good quarterback. You win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield, I think, and it helps. They've got a good offensive line. I know that the two tackles, Godeke and Wirfs, have been injured. Godeke got injured in that game. But, they even kicked Graham Barton out to left tackle where he played at Duke and did a pretty reasonable job against Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson. But, yeah, Baker's so much fun. And, yeah, helps that you've got those two guys in the backfield and you got a future Hall of Famer in Mike Evans to throw to. But, yeah, that operation doesn't work if it's not for Baker. And, him picking up those big yards. Did you see the bit where Will Anderson dragged him down and Anderson thought he stopped him getting a first down, and he was like pointing at the sky and celebrating. You could see Mayfield behind just going, dude, I just got the first down. What's wrong with you? Like, just brilliant. He's so much fun.
That game had so much and so much that applies to the Dolphins, really. Okay. Let's start here. What has happened to CJ Stroud? Because he's not look, as a rookie, he was fabulous. Like you saw that rookie season, you're like, oh my God, he's one of the best 5 quarterbacks in all of football. But you watched him last year, and now you watch him now. There's no other word to describe him but bad. He's not a good quarterback right now.
Yeah,
they do the dumb thing that we regularly do, which is just diminish that offensive line so much that CJ Stroud has no chance on that team, even with good weapons on the outside.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? The kind of the way that some players are super hyped up, and there are, I want to say, unconscious biases and maybe even conscious biases in terms of the way that we talk about quarterbacks, and we've certainly felt that in terms of the way the national conversation has been sometimes around Tua. Some of it's been deserved, but some of it's certainly not. But you also look at how certain elements of the national media will continue to prop up Trevor Lawrence, for example. And I suspect you'll see that with CJ Stroud, people talking about him as a top 10 guy. He is not a top 10. He is not a top 10 quarterback.
Like I'm telling you, Simon, sorry to interrupt you, but right behind me is the show First Take. And about 20 minutes ago, I'm staring at it. Aliens might as well just landed and been on the national news, okay? Announcing themselves to the world. because their topic was maybe we got it wrong about Dak Prescott. Maybe he is okay.
Yeah. I mean, were it not for the injuries, yeah, I think Dak's another guy that's been, treated badly by fans, and the injuries haven't helped, certainly. And
the media.
media.
Tua fans think they got it bad. He's the original. Dak's the original.
Like the other guy that you see it happening with at the moment is like people trying to prop up. It's been 2 games. I totally get this, but it feels like there's a very positive vibe around JJ McCarthy, kind of nationally, who wasn't very good for 3 quarters against the Bills and kind of caught fire against the Bears and caught fire in the fourth quarter after throwing a really bad pick 6, and then was really poor against Atlanta, really poor against Atlanta. And, everybody saying he's a rookie. Well, he's a rookie on the field in terms of live bullets. He's not a rookie on the field in terms of, he's been in every single meeting. He was around Sam Darnold. I just think it's quite interesting to watch that narrative play out. And again, it's 2 games. But also, he missed the entire season last year with injury. He's out now with a high ankle sprain and could be potentially multiple weeks. So it'll be interesting to see what the conversation is. But going back to Stroud, he is really struggling. And that's a pretty good team. Defensively, it's a really good team. They've rebuilt the offensive line. Nick Chubb's in. They've got a solid run game. He's got decent target. Nico Collins, Xavier Hutchinson, the 2 rookies from Iowa State. He's got a tight end. But yeah, he is struggling. So, and everybody was talking about Bobby Slowick 18 months ago as the next kind of great Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel-esque play caller. Now, is it down to scheme? Is it down to talent? You hear some things, rumblings in the offseason about preparation and, all of those sorts of things. And, declaring himself as, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And that felt a little bit early. Doing your podcast with Micah Parsons, who is an absolute stud. And I'm not saying doing a podcast is going to have any impact on how he throws the ball. But, some of those off-field rumblings are, the drumbeat continues to get a bit louder when you don't play very well. And, people certainly talking about Tua's off-season, given the start that he's had. So yeah, it's just interesting and intriguing. It'll be intriguing to see where the narrative goes as we move forwards.
Yeah. Speaking of the Dolphins, I'm going to talk, a little in-house stuff as far as what's going on in Miami Gardens. But man, it's not the vibes really. It's actually what they're doing is what they're saying. Like
or not saying,
or what they're not saying. Look, I'm gonna be the first one to say it because it seems like everybody is all over Anthony Weaver as a possible head coach, candidate and head coach material. I just don't see it. Like at what point? Like we like the guy, but aren't we preparing ourselves for that thing again where, we essentially are a preparatory for coaches that are going to be good elsewhere. Because I just don't see it with Anthony Weaver. I think his staff is underperforming. When cornerbacks, especially young guys, when young guys don't know how to play certain coverages, at a certain point you got to point the finger at their coaches, right? Because you're not going to fire every player. You could do that in the offseason, but you can't do it now.
But the one thing I think about Anthony Weaver is I go back to some of the things that people said about him when he was at Baltimore and some of the things that you hear being said about him. And look, in many regards, when you're talking about a guy who could potentially replace the guy, it's the same as when you talk about backup quarterbacks replacing an underwhelming starter. Is that everybody loves a backup quarterback until he's the quarterback. But, drum beats we talked about just then with CJ Stroud, the same kind of drum beats with Anthony Weaver have lasted multiple seasons in terms of how he is seen as a culture builder, as a leader of men, as somebody that players warm to, and whether that's the physical look, obviously former NFL defensive lineman. And obviously he's been in the heat of playoff battle with the Ravens. People will say, well, his defense stinks, they're terrible. I think the two are not mutually exclusive. I think people have to separate whether or not he can be a leader of a football team and whether or not his defense isn't playing very well. And clearly his defense isn't playing very well, but that doesn't stop him being the leader of a team. And I think people really need to think about that when they talk about whether or not he should be DC. The other thing is, and we don't know how much impact coaches have when it comes to picking the groceries, but there aren't that many players on that defense, especially in positions of importance, that fit what he does. People talking about get Willie Gay on the field. Well, that's well and good, But what you don't want Willie Gay doing is going backwards in coverage. And there are multiple responsibilities for a linebacker in this system to have to go backwards in coverage. Look at the corners. Jack Jones comes in. Jack Jones has never been a zone corner. He's always been a very chippy front foot, man-to-man cover corner. It was the same as Mike Hilton. All of those guys, that they were not schematic fits. And I think what he's trying to do is trying to make it work with players that don't really fit that scheme. And it's easy for fans to sit here and analysts to sit here and go, well, just tell him to do this, just tell him to do that, just change it. That's not how it works. Like you watch, what was the game I was watching the other night when we were doing the recording? Savosia Dennis, the linebacker from Tampa who stepped in. Great going forwards, attacking the line of scrimmage, making tackles in that kind of Devon White style of in the box, great. But as a coverage guy, angles, speed to get outside, he's an absolute liability. And Woody Marks burned him down the sideline with a big catch in the first quarter or early in the second quarter. And it's the same argument where you say, well, why, just get him to play coverage, just get him. And some players just can't do that. They don't understand angles. They don't understand their own physical limitations in terms of how to do those things. So I do think there is the defense is historically bad. It is not a good defense and it's not playing well. And I do fear for what's going to happen tomorrow night. But I do urge a little bit of caution when it comes to talking about A, what he's got to work with, and B, whether or not a poor defense means he can't be a head coach, because those two things don't marry up in my eyes.
Now, I promise, listener, we will get into this game. And I know that some of you are listening to this game, hours before kickoff. So I promise you, we will talk about this game here in this first half of the show. And in the second half, when we come back from break, we will get a little bit more in depth into the X's and O's, the Jimmys and Joes of this game. But I want to ask one last question. For the next head coach, let's just say, that Mike McDaniel's not able to save his job. And there is a way he can save his job. There's definitely a way. You run off a bunch of wins, even if you miss the playoffs, but you win 9 games, you got to look at the circumstances surrounding this team, and say, my God, this guy won 9 games. Or if he won 10, you have to start considering for Coach of the Year. Okay.
I think there's a situation where they could easily lose tomorrow night. And I think the expectation would be that they lose, and probably quite heavily. Buffalo scored averaged 37 points, 38 points against Miami in the last 6 games at home, including one in the 50s, one in the late 40s. And I think if they got blown out massively on national TV tomorrow night, with almost like the extended extra time, almost like the mini week off, a decision could come. But I also think that off the back of, let's say they lose 40-27, and it's close-ish, they don't get embarrassed, certainly. The communication stuff is better, the pre-snap stuff is better, defensively they look a bit better, they get a takeaway or two, those sorts of things. I think then you're looking at 0-3, but you're looking at 0-3 through the lens of, you then play the Jets, who may well be starting Tyrod Taylor, and then you play the Panthers, and you win those 2 games, and all of a sudden you're 2-3. Things look a bit brighter, a bit rosier. So I think as long as the Dolphins don't get spanked tomorrow night, and it's 55-14, and it looks terrible, and Mitch Trubisky plays the fourth quarter because Josh is already sat on the sideline, and they're just they're 30-0 up at halftime, and it just looks terrible. I think a decision could come, but I think if they're competitive and they keep it close enough, I think you look at the bigger picture, which is the fact that coming into week 6, you could be 2-3, and you could make the case that really and truly we should be 3-2 because we should have won that game on Sunday. So,
yeah. So the question is, for the next head coach, the next possible head coach, in my opinion, there's only one that I can see out there that could get fired and fits that criteria, the criteria that I want perfectly, which is a guy on his second stop that has already seen some of the wars, has played some of the politics already behind the scenes, and has some experience, but it still kind of has that new car smell. My guy would be Kevin Stefanski.
Like that, 100%.
That would be my guy.
That would be mine.
But you are with me. I am done with bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Even if it's Marcus Freeman, which is a sexy name, I'm done with all of that. You agree?
The one guy that I think he could be talked into, he as in Stephen Ross, would be Jesse Minter, who's the defensive coordinator of the Chargers, who stood in for Jim Harbaugh in that game where Harbaugh was suspended, but obviously doesn't have much head coaching experience, much if any. But I think with Ross's Michigan contacts, I think he could be talked into Jesse Minter potentially. But I agree with you. I don't think they will go, whether that's the guy coaching at the Bucks, whether that's, you know, whoever, think of a first name, a first year Joe Brady, any of those kind of really good guys who've been around and are the kind of the next big thing, whether that be offensive or defensive coordinators. I think it will be somebody, if it is somebody new that has coached before, and whether that, let's say McDaniel gets fired tomorrow night or Friday, and after they get blown out, I would suspect that Weaver would take over to the end of the season. Now, if the defense gives up 60 points and is terrible, you could see a situation where Weaver gets canned as well. And then at that point, there's a John Gruden, there's a Mike McCarthy. Those are the options potentially. But I would suspect if something happened, Weaver would come in. And I think next year you wait and see which of the coaches have been relieved, who's been fired, who's been, you know, who's out there. And if Kevin Stefanski does get fired by the Browns, I think you would be absolutely all over him. The other guys potentially who would be first-time NFL head coaches, but have coached elsewhere, i.e. in college, that would be Jeff Hafley, for example, who's doing such a great job with the Packers defense. Now, how much they weigh experience, that obviously speaks to the Marcus Freeman thing. How much they weigh experience as a head coach in the NCAA versus in the NFL remains to be seen. So I'm with you 100%. I don't think it'll be a new, sexy kind of new kid on the block. I think he could be talked into Minter, but I suspect it would be a veteran retread because, that's just the way it's going to go. There are people I know Anthony Campanile, for example, who's extremely highly regarded, but again, never coached before in terms of being a head coach. So is that a path they will tread? I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, Anthony Campanile is one of those guys that always impresses. You know, when you speak to him one-on-one, like he's a guy he's gonna command the room. Fans are gonna love him as soon as he opens his mouth because you've only really heard him.
Like, what if Steve Ross gets to the end of the season and says, I can't do this anymore? Hand it over to the girls. Hand it over to Bruce Beal. Can't do it anymore. The girls being his daughters. I can't take it anymore. I'm 86 years old. I've spent $500 million or $1 billion or whatever it is. I can't. It's joy. I'm not having any fun anymore. And the whole thing clings out. The GM goes, everybody. The new owner, the new general manager could just think, you know what? I've got a relationship with Marcus Freeman. I've got a relationship with Luke Fickell. I've got a relationship with the offensive coordinator of the Bengals. I've got whoever it is. I love Lou Anarumo or whatever. You know, it could be somebody that's like, Brandon Staley was mistreated at the Chargers. Whatever it is, we just don't know.
So our partner Chris Kaufman gave us a name that kind of perked my ears up because he kind of fits that. He fits like all the molds. Like he is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He is the new kid on the block, but he also has NFL head coaching experience. What do you think of Lane Kiffin? And then we'll go to break.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lane has pretty much outgrown. I think Lane has outgrown college football in many regards. I think Ole Miss had a massive chance last year at the national championship with all those players. And I think that was their best opportunity and they didn't even make the playoff. And, you know, there's a guy living in Jupiter, Florida, who might want to come in as a sort of CEO of the team, a guy by the name of Nick Saban. I mean, Saban and Lane Kiffin. I think that people talk about Champ Kelly obviously being in-house, as it were. I think people talk about Marvin Allen being in-house and potentially being two GM candidates. For me, if you're going to do it, if you're going to blow the whole thing up, you've got to blow the whole thing up. And like I said on Monday night show, I don't want to put people out of jobs, but I think, having Ron Brockington still there, nothing against Ron, and but having the same guys doing the same evaluations, the same thing over and over and over and over.
Although again, I would disagree with you on Champ Kelly because the guy doesn't even have an office in the building. Like,
okay,
he literally just got there.
We both know he's really well regarded and really well talked about, and been talked about as a GM candidate elsewhere. But what about going to Kansas City? What about going to a Green Bay, for example? What about going to a Philadelphia? These really well run. Or Alex Halaby at Green Bay, John Eric Sullivan at Green Bay, Alex Halaby at Philadelphia. And what about Dawn Aponte, for example? An old Miami Dolphin, a close friend of Stephen Ross, and somebody who's interviewed for the Chargers GM job when Tom Telesco was fired, and is really well regarded, obviously, for her work inside the NFL office, but is seen as a future general manager. What about Dawn Aponte coming home? A Dawn Aponte, Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin triumvirate as we move into the new dawn. Who knows? I just think there's so many plates spinning in terms of, it could just be McDaniel, but it could also be the owner, the quarterback, the head coach, and the general manager all go in a short space of time. And I think that's something that we all have to kind of bear in mind.
Yeah, if you watch Stephen Ross, and we're going to go to break right now. If you watch Stephen Ross in that game, you saw the whole gamut of emotions. Malik Washington returns to punt for a touchdown. By the way, that was the first time I was actually pretty excited this season. He's a good player. He's a good player. Like,
he's a really good player. He's a really good player. He's somebody
he's a keeper. But then you see Stephen Ross right afterwards, and he's sitting there like, you can tell Stephen Ross is suffering with this team.
And we're suffering just as fans who just watch this shit every week. He's suffering as a guy that has plowed his life in you know.
Yeah, like, look, we cover this team. We cover this team, and we want this team to win.
Of course.
And
also, this situation, I think this is really interesting, and we had this discussion, the three of us, last night. And I'm not going to reveal all of it but I think I speak for a lot of fans who, you want the team to win, you want the team to do well because you love the team. Like tomorrow night, I'm going to be, getting up at, not even going to bed, but, I won't go to bed till 5 o'clock, and I've got to get to work at 8 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, get up at 8, 3 hours sleep. I'll be exhausted on Friday. Friday night's my favorite night of the week just because it's the weekend. I'll probably be asleep by like 10:30. But, that's the commitment we make as fans, whether that's financial commitment, whether that's time, all of those things. But the outlook is so gloomy at the moment that it almost makes you hate the team. Like, it's not going to stop me loving the team, but it also makes me just hate the pro, because for the very reason you talked about, you get excited when Malik scores his touchdown, and then it's like they scored a touchdown on the I mean, how many punt return touchdowns were there last year? Was it 6 in total last season?
Yeah, and then there's been 7 this year.
Yeah, and then boom, away you go. And I thought what's really funny and kind of highlights this point completely, and then you can go to break, is that during the game, you remember when they punted from right deep at their 3-yard line or their 5-yard line or whatever, and then there was a false start penalty, and the ball was moved right back to the goal line, and the guy had to punt from the back of the end zone.
I agree with the move, but I knew that the next punt was going to be like 5,000 yards.
Chris said, "Oh yeah, I know what's going to happen now. I'll just boom an 80-yard punt." And the game 76 yards. It's just like, it's just, that's exactly the point. It's like, yeah, we're going to get the ball at midfield. At worst, guy booms off his longest career kick, and it's just like, we're starting further back than we would be if he booted into the end zone. It's just like,
yeah, it's one of those things. Like, can we go back and just, we'll take the penalty?
Yeah, that's the Dolphins in a nutshell. That is,
it really is. It really is. And we're going to get into this game as soon as we come back from break. But first of all, let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy. Football is back, and some are excited about it. Some are just enduring it. And it's only been 2 weeks. And Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your money. And you can win with as little as $1. There's a couple of plays that I'm looking at for tomorrow. If you want to do a all-homer ticket, you can. And I actually think they all have a chance to come out. And I think it's a 7X play. Tua Tagovailoa, 233.5 passing yards. If you go higher, he's gone higher on the Bills 5 out of the last 6 games. So maybe that's a good one for you. Josh Allen to throw an interception. It's at 0.5. In fact, just take 202 if you want. Jalen Waddle, 49.5 receiving yards. He has 4 100-yard games against the Buffalo Bills. So maybe that one's for you. And I think this one is, just hand us this one already, which is Devon Achane, higher than 38.5 receiving yards. Devon Achane is, in my opinion, maybe Christian McCaffrey's a little bit better, but Devon Achane is the best receiving back in all of football, and I don't think I'm too crazy to say something like that. So download the app today and sign up with the promo code 3 yards to score $50 in bonus funds when you play with your first $5. That's promo code 3 yards. That's the number 3 yards. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog, make picks, win money.
Be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
All right, and we are back. Let me take off this this overlay. I've gotten pretty good at that, Simon. You saw that?
I loved it.
You know, I'm pretty good at this. I'll give you a little inside baseball. My introduction to TV production was essentially Stugatz just telling me, "Do you know how to run this board?" And I'm like, "No." And he tells me, "Our executive producer will train you." I got trained for 2 hours. I was producing a show the very next day. So a lot of this stuff is self-explanatory. All right, let's get into this game. 3 out of the last 4 times they played in Buffalo. Actually, the Dolphins tend to play Buffalo a lot better in Buffalo than they do in Miami. Now, it does not help that Miami has only played Buffalo at home at 1:00 before October once in the last 6 years, and they won that one game. They play them again later on in the season. I believe it's in November, and I think that's a 1:00 game, but it'll be nice and cool. The weather will be nice then. So Miami hasn't had the weather advantage, so to speak, lately against Buffalo. But in Buffalo, Miami has tended to play pretty well. I go back to that snow game in 2022 where they had the running game going. In my opinion, they just flat out blew that game. You saw the playoff game. They had that game won. And I don't see how it's possible that they lose that game if they had their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, in that game. Last year was yet another example. Miami scored on every single drive of the second half, except one where Raheem Mostert fumbled against the Bills. So the offense has tended to have some success. They've tried to build a defense for Josh Allen. It obviously has not worked out because all these games that have come down to the wire all feature the same thing, which is a Miami offense that's playing pretty well, scoring points, but Josh Allen puts on his cape and says, "Everybody get on my back, and I'm going to beat these guys again," like I have many times before. I believe what's his record now? 13-2 against Miami.
13-2 against the Dolphins.
That's
and if
ridiculous.
you count those 2 defeats, one of those was when Charles Clay dropped the go-ahead touchdown with 53 seconds to go, and the other one was that one 2022 when we beat them 2019, where he had 400 yards and 50 yards rushing, and then and they had the 4th down pass into the end zone that fell incomplete. So
So I know we're looking forward to this game on Thursday, but I want to go back a little bit. How did you experience? Because the way I experience these games is like there's nothing you can do. Like this guy is just getting the ball back last against you and just saying, okay, let's just beat these guys again. How have you experienced this Mike McDaniel era against the Buffalo Bills? Because it's not like the Bills are just kicking the crap out of you every time. No, you're losing close games consistently over and over and over again to this team.
Knowing that that's what happens when you have an alien quarterback. That's the difference. Tua's 1-8 against Josh Allen. 64% completion rate against the Bills is pretty good. Actually, against the Bills is pretty good. But 9 touchdowns compared to 10 interceptions. That's the most picks he's thrown against a single opponent. I know 4 of them came in one game. But yeah, it's just that's what happens when you have a future Hall of Famer, a guy who's kind of defining this modern era of the game, one of the 4 best quarterbacks in the league, and one of the 4, this generation really. When you look at Lamar, Joe Burrow without the injuries, and Pat Mahomes. So yeah, it's difficult when you've just got a guy who can, like you say, put the cape on and just do things that very few people in the history of this game have been able to do.
Yeah, even the playoff game. He had 3 turnovers in that playoff game.
It's
of
the
course,
legs as well. It's just the ability to be able to win
Mm.
using his legs. When you think you've got him cornered, when you think it's 3rd and 18, and then he rips off a 19-yard run, and and he has to escape the pocket because you think you've got him, and then you haven't got him. That's the frustrating thing. A 3rd and 8, a 3rd and 6, a big pressure. You just know that he's going to, because that's what he does. He's just going to find a way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's talk about when the Dolphins have the football. What does it look like? We saw them last year, week 9. They played really, really well. Again, like I said, touchdowns on every drive, touchdowns and points in every single drive of the second half, except one where Raheem Mostert fumbled. And trust me, they were going in on that one too, because Raheem Mostert fumbled on a 15-yard run, and
it's interesting that people use that a lot last season. That was the first possession of the second half. Dolphins had 7 more possessions in that game to write that. Yeah, I'm not saying that wasn't a bad thing, because it was a bad thing, but it wasn't like that was the final drive of the game and then they coughed the ball up. Do you know what I mean? We had the ball back a lot after that, and I think that's just the one caveat to that fumble. Nobody likes giving the ball away, but we did have the ball an awful lot after that point.
Yeah, so it has to look like that, right? They have to get behind their running game, because in all these games, all these games that you look at that they keep losing by a field goal to the Buffalo Bills, they all feature the same thing. It's not Tua lighting up the scoreboard. It's Tua being efficient, and they're running the football, including that game last year where they ran it effectively with Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane.
Let me ask you a question. It's a short week. What would you do offensively? What would you do in a short week?
I'd lean into my simplest runs, because I know that that's what they can do. My simplest runs. Yeah. My simplest runs, and just get behind my run game and just try to stay on schedule and shorten the game.
Yeah.
If you could be within a score in the fourth quarter, I would consider it a success.
Remember that game against the Patriots, when we just went wildcat, just blew them out of the water because of something completely different. The Bills are expecting us to throw the ball, obviously, because that's what we do. I would just be the run pass ratio would be completely different. I'd just get those guys the ball. I'd get Jeff Wilson involved. Is Jalen Wright going to play? I would get Ollie Gordon a number of carries, pop passes, reverses, all of those sorts of things. I think the Bills' defense was abysmal in week 1 against Baltimore, which may be more of an indictment of how good Baltimore are, but they were much, much better last week against the Jets. I think they held the Jets to 154 yards total, which is their lowest road game total since 1990. So I think that is worth bearing in mind, because I don't think the Jets are a terrible team. And they obviously had a really good performance in week 1. I know they lost to the Steelers on that 60-yard field goal at the end, but they played the Steelers pretty well. So I would just be running the ball, and get those safeties who haven't been very good, get them down to the box. And then if you want to start passing, absolutely, because the weather is going to be okay. It's not going to be frigid and freezing. You're not going to be throwing bricks down the field, because it's not going to be that cold. So you get a break there. But I would just be using that run game. Achane in the screen game, Ollie Gordon smacking people in the mouths, 2-back sets, split zone with the guys come motion inside, taking on Rousseau and Bosa, just to get a kick out block to, and lean on what Savaniah does well, which is run block. He's been a big liability in pass protection. Let's run behind the big left-hand side of the line and make some hay down the field. No Ed Oliver, who was their standout player in week 1. No Matt Milano, who's probably their best player over the last 5, 6, 7 years defensively. So, what's there to lose?
Yeah, really nothing. You're expected to lose. You're, I believe, 12.5-point underdogs.
Yeah, and that's come down from 17. I mean, somebody's been piling the cash on, because that's come down from like 17.
Yeah, well, not that high, but it did open like at 13.5, 14.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it's down to like 11.5. Like now, like I guess people are looking at those stats. Like Miami, for whatever reason, does tend to play Buffalo pretty tight in Buffalo, including that playoff game. But like all these other games where they've had some success, they're going to have to create some turnovers against Josh Allen. And that's one thing that Joe Brady has done since he took over. He has them playing on schedule with an identity where they run the football. They allow Josh Allen to take care of third down, and man, it works for them. But back to the Dolphin offense. look, it's time to. We saw that last drive. They have Ollie Gordon doing a 2 count motion, and he's like, "Am I going? Am I not?" And Tua's looking at him like, "What are you doing?" That
Why
was
is he
a
in the game?
penalty.
Why is Jeff Wilson not in the game at that point?
Like Jeff Wilson actually knows.
Yeah, you're
calls.
you're keeping Gordon into pass protect anyway. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't you have Jeff Wilson in there? Because A, he can pass protect, and B, he knows the offense really, really well because he's played in it for like the last 5 years.
Yeah. So there's something to be said about just simplify things. Ricky Williams did an availability. Well, he was on a podcast not too long ago, and they asked him, how did they handle things when he played here the first time around, and he says that sometimes they're protecting a lead, and North Turner would actually call down to him and say, "Give me 4 run plays that you really like." And Ricky's like, "I like this, this, and this." And he goes, "Okay." And he says, "That's all I would hear. Those are the run plays I would. The ones that I wanted to run behind were the ones that I was running." I think you get into a room and you ask Ollie Gordon, "What do you feel comfortable with? What do you like running out of?" That's in the game plan.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
That should be behind the fullback, smashing people in the mouth through the A gap, which is what he's done on the 2 carries that he's actually had, apart from the short yardage carry, effectively running through the A gap, following Ingold, and smacking people in the mouth.
Yeah, and that's what they should do. And as far as the passing game, man, they just got to get on the same page. That interception, Kurt Warner did a thing on it. Like, what the hell is Tyreek Hill doing? Like, why is he breaking off his route up the field?
The one where he's running across and then just turns up, the one that got called back. Yeah, I saw that on all 22 and obviously thought it was just a bad throw to start with. But, and I'm not trying to be a Tua defender here, but literally if he carries on running straight across, it's a completion. And just as Tua's cocked and the ball's kind of coming out, Tyreek just turns upfield. Uphill? What? Well, could be uphill. But yeah, I mean, that's look. You can't excuse the one that actually counted against Mappe. And, there were certainly throws down the stretch. The 4th down play where he didn't see Julian Hill. The one where he runs out of bounds and he's got Tanner Connor cutting inside and Connor's absolutely wide open. And for a lefty, that is an easy throw. And then, the deep ball to Waddle, if he just waits for a split second more in a clean pocket, Malik is wide open on Tua's favorite throw, which is kind of deep in the middle of the field. So there were definitely plays left out there. And you just got to take advantage. The Bills this is an unbelievable offense. We know it is. And I think, James Cook had 132 yards. Josh can run the ball all over the yard. Ray Davis is a really good player. The offense has been, singing without having, unbelievable. Keon Coleman played really well in week 1. I love the kid out the slot, the kid from Boise State, whose name completely escapes me, but it begins with a K. But yeah, they're a good team. They're a good player. They haven't got Josh Palmer going yet. But yeah, they're going to be tough to stop. But for us on offense, it's just getting in rhythm with that run game. And, you don't want to see them just come out and be vanilla with it. Like, you can be fancy in the run game without, having to do ridiculous things. You can keep teams off balance. And I think the more they're able to run it, then that will open up the stuff that McDaniel really wants to do, which is obviously throw the ball.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to when the Bills have the football. Look, the splits are stark, okay? You could look them up. They're available to anybody who wants to watch them. You play man-to-man defense against Josh Allen, he will destroy you. And I'm talking about like a 5-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. You're talking about 8 yards per play. It's ridiculous. But you play zone against Josh Allen, his numbers kind of look pedestrian. Like they're kind of average, really. But here's the thing. You look at this team, and if I were, and not that I'm better at this than Brandon Bean, but if I were running that team, man, I would get Josh Allen a deep threat. Because if you get him a deep threat, there is no defense for Josh Allen. That team does not have a deep threat. So I think you got to risk giving up plays over the top, and you got to play closer to these wide receivers, and you just got to play those short zones. Yeah. Because you can't afford to be playing with your back to Josh Allen and have him take off every 3rd and 6. So that's my main That's my main ethos for this game. Like if I'm on the whiteboard, I say stay plastered to these wide receivers in the short zone. I don't give a crap if you're giving up a deep ball. If you give up a deep ball to the Buffalo Bills, okay, they got you. But I don't fear it, so I'm going to cut that loose. Your thoughts? How do you begin to defend Josh Allen in this game?
Snowplow, fighter jets. I mean, look, what's the one thing we've talked about the Dolphins not being the first couple of weeks of the season, and that's disciplined. It's maintaining maintaining rush integrity with your pass rush lanes. You know, Chop is really guilty of that, getting too far upfield and allowing quarterbacks in behind him. That's one of the things I think you need interior push, and we've really not seen that at all. I think Kenneth Smart's been pretty disappointing. I know it's only 2 games. Zach Sealer's been pretty disappointing. I know it's only 2 games. But
by the way, what did you make of that the one that I posted on OnlyFans, the biggest play of the game, which was that wheel route to Ramondre Stevenson?
Yeah,
like that was as designed. Jalen Phillips beats his man, flushes Drake May up into the pocket. Kenneth Grant shaded over, occupies the center and the guard, and you have Zach Sealer one-on-one with Mike Uwenu, and he gets manhandled.
Yeah,
and the pass gets off.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I think you're going to need a huge game from Jordan Brooks. Dodson, they obviously know really well because former Bill, his play through the first couple of weeks has scared me. And I think you've just got to play really big game for Minka. And I just think kind of coordination, conversation, all of those things, communication, huge when you're playing a team like the Bills. But the other thing is, and it's the thing that you can't control no matter how many times you do it, it is the Allen factor, the ability to just get something out of nothing when you're least expecting it, or when you think you've got him penned in. He can just put his head down and run over somebody. He can just outrun somebody to the corner and get upfield and pick up the back breaking first down. And the offensive line is so good. I think I saw a stat yesterday. I think they've had all 5 offensive linemen for every single game over the last 2 seasons, apart from 1 game where Spencer Brown missed last year. Otherwise, it's been exactly the same starting lineup. They're a really good team, a really good offense, a really good offensive line, and they've got the MVP. I mean, the run game works really well, especially behind that line, but the receivers can block. Khalil Shakir was the guy I was talking about. Shakir can block. Coleman can block. Palmer's a really good blocker. They've obviously got the fullback in Reggie Gilliam when they want to use him. And
I like those 2 tight ends. I think those 2 tight ends are a huge factor.
And then they've got Jackson Hawes, who is comfortably the best blocking tight end coming out of the draft. The 3 tight ends are excellent: Kincaid, Knox, and Hawes. And then they've got the big guys up front, Osiris Torrance. And
by the way, what did you think of my hot take yesterday? Tyler Warren is the best tight end in football.
No, not yet.
I don't know.
Not
so
yet.
So far, so good. No.
Yeah, I mean, he looks excellent at the moment. But in terms of like who is the best tight end in the NFL, I mean that after 2 games. We would be absolutely hostages to fortune if we were to say that he is better than Bowers or McBride or Kittle.
Jackson Hawes would have solved a lot of problems for this Dolphin team.
He would, but don't forget he's playing in a position of visibility, and I think that was one of the things that hurt Miami in terms of the overall optics in Week 1. You don't really see, unless you're watching the All-22, you don't, or you've got Aaron Donald, you don't really see the impact that a defensive tackle has. In those terms, everybody knows how great Vita Vea is, but not many people who just turn on Red Zone or whatever can tell you why Vita Vea is such a good player. You look at the stats, the box scores. Vita Vea isn't, he's not troubling the scorers with sacks or all those sorts of things, but his impact is done differently. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that hidden impact with Kenneth Grant yet. We've seen it a little bit with Jordan Phillips, who's played all right. He's been okay. But you really want Grant to start playing. And optically, when Tyler Warren catches 7 for 77 against you, when he was available on the board and comes off 1 or 2 picks later, that's obviously going to hurt you when you lose the game 33-6.
Yeah. By the way, you took away 2 points from us. Give us credit, Simon.
Sorry.
We scored 8 points.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But and I guess we could finish here, and then I'll ask you one last question. Jackson Hawes. I know I said Jackson Hawes in this last little. I meant to say Tyler Warren. I have Jackson Hawes on the brain. He would have also solved a lot of problems for this team.
He would have solved probably more problems than Tyler Warren.
Yeah, because you could have used what did he go? He went in the 5th or 6th round.
Fifth round.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, he looks like something. The good news is, and watch him catch 6 for 105. But the good news is he's not going to hurt you visibly. He's going to hurt you in the hidden yardage of the game, where he's going to hit a cutoff, he's going to hit a kick out, and that's going to be key for James Cook to run behind. He's a really good run blocker. I love their tight ends. I love
who is the Bills' number 1 player according to PFF over the first 2 weeks on offense?
It's probably Jackson Hawes, because he's pretty solid. Yeah.
It's Jackson Hawes.
Yeah, this team, there's not many, in my opinion, there's not many mistakes in team building. Like, you could say, okay, the safeties are terrible. Maybe they could use another cornerback. That's true. Maybe you don't like your edge players that as much as you like some of the other guys that become available every once in a while, because they seem to be in every conversation for every edge rusher or every defensive player on the front line that becomes available. But what they've done as far as team building on that offensive line and their tight ends, God, I love that tight end group. Like they're the exact opposite of what the Dolphins have. They have 3 useful tight ends, 3 tight ends we would love to have. So I love what they've done. I asked you earlier, and you seem to be out of answers. I guess we could go out on this. You're on the whiteboard. You got to make these guys believe. What is your plan to stop Josh Allen? How do you begin to stop Josh Allen? And I think we could end it there.
How do we begin to stop Josh Allen? I mean, just got to get in his face. That pass rush has got to step up. We've got high-paid, high draft pick players. I know the 2 guys, and we talked about it all summer, coming off injuries, but Chop's got to get going. Zach Sealer's got to get going. Chubb's got to get going. Weave's got to throw in some blitzes, I think. You've just got to get after him. You've got to hit him. You've got to knock him down. You've got to get hands up in the air to knock the ball down. You've got to stay in your rush lane in terms of integrity. Players have just got to play absolutely lights out. And, you've got to hope for not a miracle, but you've got to hope for something pretty special. But I think ultimately Buffalo win, and you just look at how it could go. The confidence of the 2 teams coming in, the offense. I mean, it's hard not to say. It's hard not to put Buffalo score in the 40s and Miami's in the teens or the early 20s. I'm going to be brutally honest. And I think they'll play hard. I think if the score's over 50, I think we might be doing a podcast on Monday with Mike McDaniel being an unemployed head coach. If it's like 52-14 or something, I just don't see a way back from McDaniel.
Yeah. All right, let's pick this game. I'll go first. I don't like the short week. I just don't. Okay. No. If it were a long week, I would actually pick them to beat the spread and lose by a touchdown or lose by a field goal, lose in some other excruciating way, which is what they tend to do in Buffalo. Like, they tend to play really hard in Buffalo and then just find a way to lose in the last minute. But that's not what I see. So the line has come down to 11.5. I'm going to beat that line. And I think they look okay for most of the game, but lose by 2 touchdowns. Bills 34, Dolphins 20. What say you, Simon?
I'm going to go 42 Buffalo, 24 Miami. 42-24.
That works too. Unfortunately, we're essentially arriving at the same, conclusions in this game. All right, that's it. There is no more. We will talk to you after this game, possibly on Monday. Maybe there's news. Maybe there isn't news. Maybe we're sitting around just looking at each other like, what was that?
2-1.
Yeah. All right, that's it. There is no more. We will talk to you again next week.
Cheers, dude.
All right, man.